I play World of Warcraft. Not a ton nowadays. I usually just play for role-playing, and I only really do dungeons and raids to try to get like 1 or 2 cosmetics before kind of giving up. But I've been playing for over a year now, like at the end of Legion. And hey, given what I've done so far, even if it's starting to die off for me and a lot of other people, I had fun. I don't play many MMOs, and if my friends move on to something else, then I'll probably join them, but it was a nice introduction to how these games usually work. However, after playing for all that time and getting used to the controls and everything, there is one thing that always bugged me about a certain portion of the community, especially now that the WoW Classic Beta is out and some people are testing it. The community wants the game to be harder and more challenging, and now that by itself isn't a bad idea. I mean, we have mythics and shit for people who want to go up against beefed up bosses for the more exclusive rewards, but the idea that WoW needs to be harder is kinda stupid, because the game has never been hard. Ever. Never ever. Not even vanilla. Let me explain. Now, when I say hard, I mean challenging. Yes, technically a lot of enemies have a lot of health, and it's hard to kill them yourself, but the solution to killing them is never to get better or more skilled at the mechanics provided to you. It's usually just to grab another person playing the game and overpowering them through sheer numbers. That's not hard. That's just having to have friends. The notion that something is hard implies that there is a lot of skill required in order to overcome it. And if we're being honest, WoW does not take a lot of skill. It takes a lot of time, but not a ton of skill. If you place your key bindings right, it becomes a game that isn't based on your timing to your reactions to things, but rather a game of pressing 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 3. Whoops, I'm on low health. Better heal. 4, 4, 4, 4. Alright, I'm healed. 1, 1, 2, 5, 2. Maybe I'm ignorant or something, but I am amazed on how this game is even an esport. Because it's basically just that combat formula, except everyone is moving around the map like they're having a stroke. There's not a lot of strategy involved other than, oh boy, I hope my friends are still with me before I fucking die. And you can say that there are a lot of games like that. Like, any MOBA can technically play out just as one team ganging up on one guy, meaning that the team wins. But it is very possible in any other game for that one solo person to be skilled enough and to have the resources to wipe out the other 3 people if they walk into that fight prepared. But if you do that in WoW, it's like, yeah, don't even bother. Back when Wrath launched, a lot of people apparently complained that the game was too easy when there wasn't much skill required in the first place. And as far as I understand, the game hasn't changed much mechanically since then. When you're surrounded by enemies, you aren't thinking about things like enemy placement, which enemy is shooting you with arrows and which is trying to attack you up close. Because in reality, they're basically the same, other than that you have to run a little closer to the ranged ones. In scenarios when you're fighting melee enemies and ranged enemies at the same time, who they are doesn't really matter, because there are no barriers that block you from just literally phasing through them. There are no real hitboxes either. You can just walk right through the melee attackers and then continue to bash on your enemies till they're dead. The only real way you die in this game is if you're outnumbered to the point where your healing can't keep up, and it isn't hard at all to tell what that number is. People said that they died a lot in vanilla compared to now, and I totally believe that. Like, apparently strong elites roamed the roads and could wipe you out if you weren't careful. And people use that case to reinforce the argument that the game was harder way back when, without mentioning that it was 15 years ago. A lot of us at the time were little babies. We probably got our ass kicked in every game we played because we barely understood how exactly everything worked, and we didn't have quicker reaction times like we do now. And even if you were an avid gamer back then, that isn't hard. It's not hard at all. An enemy that just one-shots you on the road that happened to be walking by you that you could have never predicted the damage of, it's not difficult. The solution to beating that enemy is, again, either getting a couple of friends to do the same thing you all usually do, except all at once, or to just walk around it. That's it. Let's take a look at an actual hard, challenging game and compare why it's hard to why WoW is hard. Dark Souls. The holy grail of hard games.
At the end of the day, I think we've kind of made the Dark Souls of competitive first-person shooters.
Now, Dark Souls isn't hard just for the sake of being hard. Sure, it'll kick your ass, but it's not because you end up being overpowered by the sheer number of enemies or something. It's because you haven't fully grasped the mechanics or the layout of a certain area yet. If you're skilled enough in Dark Souls and you've mastered its mechanics and you're prepared for the challenges ahead, you can take on the most powerful bosses in the game without much trouble. Or with plenty of trouble still, because they'll still kick your butt. But when you invite a friend to play with you in Dark Souls, the game still demands that you bring your skill to the table, because you can still get killed really easily, and not one guy is going to be able to carry you through an entire level. Having friends come with you does not automatically mean that you're going to be better at the game. You still have to rely on reacting to your enemy attacks, choosing when to attack, managing your stamina and health, parrying, rolling, dodging, kicking, how much weight you're carrying, all of your stats, your weapon type, enemy placement, whether to use an item then and possibly lose it forever or save it, and yeah, that is difficult, but it is a skill that can be mastered. WoW does not have that. Playing Dark Souls requires you to be attentive to overcome it. Meanwhile, in WoW, you just have to invite enough pals and then 99% of any challenge you had to do is gone. Even when the game has an interesting mechanic with a certain boss or dungeon or raid or whatever, you don't figure it out through organic gameplay. You can just read the adventure guide and it tells you how to kill it. And you know what? That is totally okay. Because World of Warcraft does not need to be hard, or demanding in high skill, or super difficult. It was not designed that way. It was designed specifically so that you would have to invite friends and interact with other players to overcome obstacles. World of Warcraft should not try to be Dark Souls, because if it did with its current mechanics, it'd suck. I mean, more than it kinda does now. WoW was designed to encourage you to interact with other players, since that is the point of an MMO. It's not trying to make you think super hardcore about every precise move you make. Whether you move left or right during a fight in Dark Souls could mean the difference between life and death, but moving left or right during a fight in WoW just means that you moved slightly to the left or right. Cool. All WoW can really do to become harder is to raise its enemy health and damage, and that does not automatically make it harder. In some games, those changes can actually have an impact on the design, but all it would do in Warcraft is just take things longer than they already do. When I take on an elite, I'm not thinking that I need to switch up my strategies and I have to watch out for those specific moves or memorize its attack animations. I'm just thinking, oh, this will take a little while longer than normal. Okay. So please, stop demanding that WoW should be harder, so that it can get rid of the casual players. WoW was never actually hard in the first place. If anything, making it more difficult to those standards just makes things more annoying. And we don't want that. We want it to be fun. It might take the next expansion till we get to what fun looks like, but let's not make it worse for ourselves now.